My name is Ville Gullstrand. I'm from Sweden, and I'm a black belt ninja. And as you can hear from that title, I don't really care that much about titles. If you have any feedback for me individually, you will be able to reach me on Twitter at Viking. And now I just said I'm not that much about titles, but there is one exception, and that is why I've added FTRSA. That's actually, well, it's maybe not a title, but it's something that I'm pretty proud of. And that's being a fast track recognized solution architect for the Power Platform for Power BI, that is. So I'm actually on this website along with about 33 other people, and I will send you that link since it's not clickable in the PowerPoint when I'm sharing my screen, but it's in the chat right now. Now, what this means is, as you can see, that I like to live my life inside of Power BI and do complex reports, do all sort of things with data and create insights, which is why it may come as a surprise that we are not going to go into the insights of Power BI and drive adoption for teams. We're actually going to start this presentation with a twist. Now, I'm assuming you expected us to go into like complex formulas and what kind of usage data there is in Microsoft 365 that we can use to push the adoption of Microsoft Teams. But I need you to think again, because we will actually look into what the actual product of Power BI can do in terms of driving usage adoption in Microsoft Teams, not the actual insight of what the reports are giving us. So what am I talking about? Well, let's look into some of the examples that I have here in the presentation, and beginning with a tab in a team where we can add something I call file analytics. So if we go to Teams, on the left side of our Teams menu, we have all the teams that we are a member of. And if we dive into one of these teams, in my example, the events and learning team, we have all the channels in there. And in any channel, we can add a tab right up here. We can add multiple tabs, like in this case. One of them could be a Power BI report. So we can enhance Microsoft Teams by adding Power BI, the product of Power BI, into channels and have Power BI reports as tabs inside of that team, enhancing the experience of Microsoft Teams for the end users using Microsoft Teams. Now, what file analytics is this. It's a very simple report, but it gives you an idea of the files inside of your team. So the source of this Power BI report is actually the SharePoint file library, or sorry, the SharePoint document library of the team in which the Power BI report exists. So any team member can use this tab and find more information and insight of the files that are inside of this team. Now, the reason why you want to do this could be, for example, that, well, if you are on your traditional collaboration site, like let's say a traditional file server, and you have a G colon, for example, then you would just have a bunch of files, and it would be like the ocean. It would just be, yeah, go fish. The files are in there somewhere. And as you want to move to Teams, you usually stop at migrating files because it's too complex. It takes too much time to move your files into Teams, so you stop. You don't do that. But by adding the File Analytics tab, you actually get a value of putting your files inside that team, and now you can do the cleaning activity afterwards. So you move them first, and then the team is able to determine what to keep and what to not keep in their team, and they get a much better idea of what kind of files do we have in here. Now let's go into like what this report is actually showing us. First of all, we have some KPIs. So let's say you have this file analytics tab on multiple teams. So any team you are a member of, you have set up this file analytics report. So this way you're able to compare some KPI numbers or call out numbers between the different teams that you are a member of. what we're seeing is the amount of files on a total scale. How much space are they taking up, which was a problem back in the days, but really isn't that much of a problem when we are now in a Office 365 environment where, well, storage is all we have here, right? And the average day since last modified could be some kind of indicator of how active is this team really, and most importantly, I mean, for how long ago did we start saving files in this team that we for some reason still keep and do not modify? So if we look at this one, we get a better perspective on what this means. In the events and learning teams that we have, we are adding a lot of files as we have attended conferences or user groups, for example. We download the presentations and we put them into the events and learning team. So naturally, we have some spikes. In 2018 and 2017, we attended conferences. We downloaded all the material from that conference, and that way we can search for it now and we can create new presentations, for example. However, it may not be that relevant today since Office 365 is an evergreen service and everything is constantly changing. So maybe we want to clean this place up a bit as we go. But we do get like an idea on how much material we are storing in this team and how much we are working with in this team. So we can make better assumption on should we make like cleaning efforts. And then if we drill down a little bit more, we can see in which root folder the amount of files are stored and how much size of the total size in the team is taken up by each root folder. So as we can see here, the Ignite 2018 folder is really large and it contains of most files. It's also a very, like the average days of last modified is 817 for the files within this folder. Then the oldest modified, or the oldest, as I see that I made a bit of a spelling error, file in this root folder is from 2018. Now this insight is awesome because imagine how long it would take for a person to make such a report for the rest of the team and help them focusing on cleaning these different folders if they had to do it traditionally. Like, where would we start? Which folder contains most information? If you just had a traditional file storage, you wouldn't be able to tell. But moving your files into teams and using Power BI to make this kind of insight, you would actually get this kind of insight. So Power BI can help you drive this value on top of your team's journey. Now, apart from just having the different folders, which is super simple, Power BI obviously comes with a built-in native function to filter one table based on another. So if we select a certain extension, like the file extension for a specific file type, it's actually going to modify the table on the left and just show us insight and data based on that kind of file. So it does come with some cool insights just on top of what it's already in there. This file analytics report, it also comes with a tab called Cleanup, and in here you can give the ability to your team users and the team owners to clean up the information inside their team. So first of all, let's just select an extension like PDF files, and then on the slider, select the amount of days that we want to filter out that any certain file needs to be unmodified for. In this case, 900. So any file that is a PDF file and hasn't been modified for 900 days. They will show up here and we will see that it's actually only 52 files and they don't even consist of 1 gigabyte of data. So maybe not the first thing we want to clean up. But again, imagine trying to find this information or make this kind of insight if you didn't have all the data stored inside your team. Imagine if you, let's say you sat down on your departmental meeting and you suggested, let's clean up all the old PDF files. It would just take hours to determine if this was even a good idea in the first place. And here it takes a few seconds. And anyone in the team can do it and determine should we make the cleaning efforts regarding this selection or not. And should we also go down here we will get the details on the actual files and where to find them. So we can download this list and we could, well, manually remove them or have a script remove all these files or archive them or do whatever we want to do with them, because we know exactly which files are in our selection and where they are. So using a tab in Microsoft Teams to add a Power BI report will give us some value. And we can, for example, migrate our files into Microsoft Teams and get a much better understanding of what could be cleaned up. We can give more power to your team members, and that way they would have more value of using Teams than not using Teams. So that gives us the third bullet point here. Give your users a reason to adapt Teams. This is the most important thing. I mean, you guys, you are the expert. You are obviously enthusiast. You're sitting here listening to me when you could have spent this time doing something that normal people would think is more valuable. But you're looking at this and you're learning something about Teams. So you probably know how the right thing of doing things in Teams looks like and what is valuable valuable within Teams. Most people don't. So you have a chance here, you have a mission even, to show your users what value looks like and then have them determine if this is valuable to them. Now, it's great to just say stuff like use Teams for better collaboration, but that doesn't really tell them what you mean by that. That just gets them hyped up, which is also a good thing, but then you got to follow up with this is how you do it. This is an example of how you can actually collaborate in Teams, and this is one of those things. Again, let your users determine what value it would bring to them, but show them how it's made. Now, if you do want to use this report yourself, I'm going to post a URL in the chat so you can download this from the blog, and it also has instructions on how to set it up for a certain team. If you have any ideas on how you could improve this or how I could improve it for you, please reach out on Twitter. And of course, I mean, Power BI Desktop is a free product that you can install on your computer from Microsoft Store. So run along with that as well. Install Power BI Desktop and just open this file and feel free to improve it yourself as much as you want as well. Now, this was one way of enhancing Microsoft Teams and the Microsoft Teams experience using Power BI as a tab in a team, but there are many, many more ways. One of them could be when we want to use Microsoft Teams for digital workshops. Now, due to COVID-19, we are forced to find workarounds for all sorts of things. Now, this could be as simple as conducting a workshop as a moderator. And there are tons of things that you need to take into consideration. You need to fix the protocol. You may need to make sure that only the right people are presenting. You need to keep track of attendees coming back after the 5-minute break, since 5 minutes seems to mean different things to different people. Now, we've been there, done that, right? Now, personally, I like to simply share a window of a timer and then set that timer for whatever we come to an agreement on for how long the break should be. But you shouldn't have to worry about attendance as well. Now let Power BI do that for you and give your users a reason to have a simpler digital workshop with the attendance report. I should say though that the attendance report, it's not what I'm talking about is not when you are in a meeting and you go up to the small people icon and then you download a list of whoever joined the meeting as you are in the meeting. Instead, there is something called the attendance report that you need to activate in your tenant. And when you do that, let's show you, it goes like this. So after a meeting is completed, you will be able to download the attendance report, even if you're no longer in the meeting. And that is one of the magics, by activating this and not just using the built-in attendance report that you can only download as long as you are also in the meeting yourself. Now, using this CSV file and adding that to a Power BI file, we can get some insights for us and not just store the actual file alongside with like the protocol. Adding this file into this template report that I will also provide you at the end of this presentation. Will give you this kind of view, but for your own workshops and for your own meetings. So I'm expecting that not all the meetings would need an attendance report, but some might. And what we're seeing here is some callout values in the top, like what it was the name of the meeting, how many unique users attended, and for how long time. If we combine all the attendance for all the people, how much time did we spend in this meeting? And then the idea of the middle timeline is essentially to give you a visualization of how many people overlapped in this meeting and were in this meeting. So break it down part by part. The callout values, the name of the meeting, how many people were attending, and how much time did we spend here. If we go down here, we can see a timeline of who attended when, and we can see, for example, that me and Simon, in this case, we attended this meeting a bit early, probably before it even started, and then we had some discussions, and for some reason I dropped out for a little while, and then I came back in. So it also takes that into consideration. In the CSV file that you will download, that is the attendance report, you will see two lines for the same person, when they entered and when they left. And if you're interested in the actual minutes that someone entered or exited the meeting, you can simply hover over the lines, and then you will be able to see the exact time when they entered or exited the meeting. And down here, I've built in, like, I would say, like a bit of a funny cast of this meeting, super duper small light workplace analytics feature. So you can use this slider to determine how much or set the hourly cost for all the attendees, and then get an idea of what this meeting actually costed you or your organization. If you're using Power BI Desktop, you can simply change this from the Swedish crowns that it is right now into dollars or euros or whatever currency you are preferring. And the idea is to kind of give you insights on how much did we spend on this workshop or meeting. As you know, the old saying goes, this meeting could have been a Teams conversation. Now, using this, you could actually get insights on, like, how much money could we have spent on this Teams conversation to get the result and just publish it instead of having the meeting in the first place. So that's a bit more what this part is used for. Now, for the sharp-eyed, there were two tabs over the timeline. The other tab was the attendee details. And what we can use this for is, as we can see on the left side, see the exact rows from the CSV files when a certain person entered and exited the meeting, and when they returned in this case. And we can also see a bit of like overview on how many hours and meetings did any particular person attend to this meeting, and how much attendance do we have in percentage. Now, the attendance counts from the first person to enter the meeting until the last person exited the meeting. So that's why I'm, for example, not at 100%, because I left there in the middle. Now this might also look better if you're, not having two people dwelling in the meeting afterwards and discussing something that could have been a Teams call instead, and not ruining my entire report. However, the idea of the digital workshop Power BI is not to add it as a tab, of course, but instead using Power BI Desktop to download the report when you need it, and then enhance the usage of Microsoft Teams. So you're adopting Microsoft Teams as your platform, as the collaborating platform for your digital workshops, and then you enhance with using Power BI on top of that. So you give your users a reason to adopt Teams. You give them even one more reason by adding value from Power BI into Microsoft Teams by doing this. So let's see if I just can find my way back into my speaker notes. Again, your mission is to inspire and show how to do things in Teams, and let your users determine the value of this. So what I showed you before, that may be more towards like all the people working with files. In this case, it may be something you want to show your project managers, who may be struggling with determining who was attending a specific workshop or how much of the time they were attending this specific workshop. Now you can try this out yourself as well, because this is also available to download from that blog, and I will post the Teams attendance report link in the chat, and you will not be able to go into that right now because we are not finished with the presentation yet. Let's instead go over to the Power BI app in Microsoft Teams.
Let me interrupt you for a short second.
Sure.
We got two questions.
Let's
Does
see.
all the users need Microsoft Power BI license to view the dashboard?
Sorry. So the first report that I showed, the file analytics, yes, any user who would like to see that dashboard would need a Power BI Pro license, or you would have to store this in a Power BI Premium workspace in Power BI, because Power BI works a bit differently from your traditional reporting services. It's actually free to build the reports, but it costs money to make insights out of them. So anyone who wants to view and make these insights and preferably make decisions out of Power BI, they are the one paying for the license. The other one, on the other hand, the one I showed on digital workshops, that's more intended to download and make a one-time off calculation in Power BI. So that could be used by anyone at any time, because Power BI Desktop that you need to open that file is free. You can just download it from the Microsoft Store. Did I answer the question, or do we have more?
I think you answered the question. An additional question was to use something like the file analytics, what is required licensing wise and what's the pricing implication?
Right. So the file analytics report is it's using SharePoint library as its connector, and that's built into the Power BI services. So you don't really need anything except a Power BI Pro license and a team that you are a member of that you are able to read the data from, essentially. So you can put that in any of your team.
Perfect. That's it from the questions so far.
All right. And well, if there are coming up questions regarding the digital workshop, we'll stop at the next pause then, and let's bring in the Power BI app that is a part of Microsoft Teams. I don't really think you can have a session on the benefit of adopting Teams using Power BI without mentioning the Power BI app that is already in Microsoft Teams. They kind of do work hand in hand. Now, in Teams, on the left side, all the way down, you have the apps menu or the apps catalog. And in there, you can find the product called Power BI, and you can install it. That way, you will have Power BI as a application on the left side menu of your team. And in there, you have the whole Power BI services available to explore. So you don't actually never have to leave Microsoft Teams. You don't have to go into app.powerbi.com and work with your Power BI licenses from there. You can just stay inside of Microsoft Teams. Now, in this example, I'm showing the soft value calculator of bad coffee, and I'll send you that link as well, but that's not really the point of this presentation right now. The report, the report itself isn't really the important part. The important part is that if you can get your users, or just some of them, to use the Power BI services and fill the area with valuable reports, you can then add value to Teams by adding the Power BI app in here. So you will bring the people who are using Power BI and the reports into Microsoft Teams and adopt Teams as their collaboration platform and enhance, not just using Power BI to enhance Teams, but using Teams to enhance Power BI collaboration as well. Now they don't never need to leave Teams, which in itself should give some kind of value, but I think that one of the most important features that comes with the Power BI app is the chat in Teams feature up here. Now, the Chat in Teams feature up here means that we can send a link of this specific report to a channel or to other people within our Microsoft Teams environment, and they get a link that directs them straight into that report inside of the Teams app in Microsoft Teams. So instead of, for example, asking someone else to go into the report and then make these filters and make these selections, you can just make them for yourself. You can hit the Share in Teams button, and when the users arrive at this report, all those selections are made for them. So they see exactly what you saw when you clicked on the Share in Teams button. And there is another way we can use this, because that's pretty neat, but have a look at this. If we go into another report, in this case, my sleeping report from last vacation, we can go up here and see at the total slept hours. On that, if we hover over this visual, and we are again in Microsoft Teams, we can select the Chat in Teams from here as well. Now, instead of just bringing people into the whole box and all the selections are made for us, what the user will experience when they click on a link like this is, and I'm sorry that this is a different report, but you will soon get the point, that visual is light up compared to all the other ones. So if you want to focus your user's attention to one specific part of the report or one specific insight of the report, you can do that by using the Share in Teams button from a specific visual, and that one will light up. So you don't actually have to be there. You don't have to send print screens to them. You don't have to talk to them while explaining what visual that you want them to focus on. You can send them this information as a Teams message, and when they open this, they will see what you saw. So let's say you work with a colleague who works in a different, I don't know, country than you, and you have different time zones. It's hard for you to find an overlapping time where you can both speak to each other. Then you can actually enhance your Power BI experience by using Teams and adopting Teams. So in summary, the Power BI app in Microsoft, what is it used for? Well, you can bring your users into Teams if they are already collaborating using Power BI reports, like they're nerds in the financial sectors or something like that. You can make use of the Teams as a collaboration platform to work together with insights and bring that in a structured manner. Of course, save time by not going out of Microsoft Teams. Ask any person, any end users, if they think it's super easy to find all these applications and stuff inside of Office 365. Not that many people will say, yeah, sure, it's super easy. Most people say, it's like an ocean of opportunities and I don't even know where to begin. Now, the more we bring into Microsoft Teams, the more you will have a one-stop shop. So it makes sense to bring in Power BI into this one as well. And lastly, of course, give your users a reason to adopt Teams. That's the most important takeaway of the entire session. Now, yep. So again, tell your users how good looks like, and make them have them make the decision of if this is valuable to them or not. Does this resonate with my why or not? Now, the last part of this session is the personalized metrics for Teams. And this is a kind of new thing. So the personalized metric for Teams that we can use Power BI for, it's actually a recent and rather new connector in Power BI that lets a user connect to their own personal Teams data. We don't have to make any filtering. We don't have to download all the data and just make sure that you can only see your own data. Simply by authenticating using your own Office 365 credentials towards this connector, you only get your data. So I've used this connector together with a colleague named Matilda Beckman, and she's made the layout of this report that I'm about to show you. And we've made this into a Power BI template, and it looks like this. And now when you open such a Power BI template using Power BI Desktop, that is again a free product that you can download and install, you will be prompted to log in. And when you do that, you get your own data, your own data on how you are using Teams. And this is actually going to be my giveaway, my digital giveaway of Teams Nation. The other ones were like stuff that I've made before and given you on top of everything else. But this one was made specifically for Teams Nation. So it looks like this, but let's break it down, shall we? If we go in here, we first start on the personal tab. There are 3 tabs, and I'm not going to cover all of them. You can dive into all of them yourself. But first of all, we have some callout values down here. We look at, for example, the one-on-one calls that you've made in the last 90 days. It's always on a rolling 90-day schedule. It looks at how many urgent messages you've sent and how many ad hoc meetings you have had. Now, an ad hoc meeting is when you have an unscheduled call, but with more than 2 participants. That would classify as a meeting. Now, an urgent messages is when you set the priority on a message being sent to, really get the attention of the receiver. And if you have a large amount of these urgent messages, you should perhaps think about lowering them. I mean, if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. So, yep. Well, you at the end of the day, you determine what the numbers mean to you. Up here, we look at the video to audio radio. So you can see like how much time are we spending using video compared to the time we're using audio in Microsoft Teams calls and meetings. And well, yeah, so essentially the amount of time video divided by the amount of time of audio. Now, some have a culture of only entering the meeting with camera on and then you shut it down. And now some enable it for a few moments to introduce themselves and then they disable it again. I won't even go into how many studies have shown the positive impact that the video perspective has on an online meeting. So just take my word for it. You guys are beautiful and the world should see you. So having a bad hair day, trust me that you're the only one who really cares. If you don't have a good camera, that's great. Activate video in every meeting with whoever is capable of equipping you with proper gear and show them why you need an upgrade, while at the same time prove that you will actually use it if you are to receive a better camera. So don't let that be a reason to not have video on. What we're also doing is we look at this audio, video, radio over days. Like how many days have I had a good video rating? And in my case, it's only 48%. So I'm having a bit of improvements to be able to be made here. But what I could do is simply make a selection here and deselect some of the days that I usually don't work. And even if I do, well, maybe I'm just using Teams to give a quick call to a colleague, for example, and then I'm not using video. So removing Saturday and Sunday will yield a bit better results. I'm up to 67%. Still should perhaps have video on more of the time. So now a good thing about this metric is it's really personal. It doesn't matter if you're using Teams to make one call every 2 weeks or if you practically live inside Teams meetings. The radio is towards the amount of audio that you have had. So any user who is opening this will get the audio video rating based on their own behavior. So since this is your personal metrics, you are in charge of deciding what looks good to you. And you can make these changes in the Power BI desktop version if you install it. Finally, on the personalized screen, we have the functions that we are measuring against. And all this is doing is checking off if you have used this function within the last 90 days or not. If you haven't, then it's red. If you have, then it's green. And what I like about this visualization is that sometimes it's hard to know what you didn't know that you didn't know, right? So if I didn't know that there was a way to scheduling or organizing recurring meetings in Teams, well, maybe I don't even know what to search for. But now that I know, now that I see that there is a function and I'm not using it, and I know the name of it, I'm able to actually search for more information on how to use this. And if I determine that this is valuable to me, good. If I already know what it is, but I don't see the reason for using it, also good. And bear in mind that this only shows the usage for the last 90 days. So if you had, for example, sent urgent messages, but you haven't done it in the last 90 days, it's not going to show up. All the way down here, I'm just making it clear, these are your metrics. What do you make out of them? Are you happy with them? And if not, what will you do about them? All that responsibility lies in your hands. Now for Teams usage, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I also see that I'm up to 37 minutes or something. The Teams usage looks more on the usage inside of Microsoft Teams that you are a member of. So for example, during the last 90 days, I have been exposed to 3,222 channel messages. Now, don't let this scare you. I mean, it may look high at first, but then let's remember that being exposed to a message in a channel doesn't mean that it needs your attention. Unless you're mentioned, most of these messages probably will pass by unnoticed. And wait a minute, that means I should leave those teams so that I can only get the information relevant to me, right? Well, no. You see, the issue with relevance is that it's dictated by time. What is irrelevant today might have grave importance in the future. So let's say, for example, that there is a new routine to get access to one of the office buildings in your organization. You do not work in this building, you are not mentioned in the channel message containing the information, and you still sleep rather well at night unknowingly to these new procedures. Now, however, let's jump 5 weeks into the future. You are now going to visit said office building, and the information regarding entry is suddenly important to you. Now, since it was written in a team that you are a member of, you are able to search for it using the search bar on top of Teams. So just because something was written and isn't important for you right now doesn't mean it will be important for you later. But consider having an email for everything that may be important for you at any given time. That would be, that would not be good. But Teams is different from mail, and we should have a different mindset on things when it comes to Teams. So this is also one of those things that you can show your users as an example. This is how you can make good use of the search feature in Teams. This is how Teams could bring you value in terms of collaboration and sharing information. We also show you the amount of Teams that doesn't even have one channel message during this period of time. Now, these teams may be, up for consideration of leaving. I mean, maybe you could archive them, maybe you can at least hide them. Let's say they consist of super important information that you want to search on later, archive them. But if they're simply not showing any new activity at all, maybe they're just taking up space. So you will also get like a way or a dashboard to help you clean up your own Teams environment. So in summary, the personalized metrics for Teams will help your users get insights of their own Teams usage simply by opening the Power BI template file on their computer and logging in. That way they will have information that only they have access to. In your case, you only have access to your own information. And then they can use this kind of like My Analytics and make decisions on how they want to improve their own Teams experience. As you can see, you can drive a culture of sharing information and collaborating in Microsoft Teams by telling the story. I mean, the thing that I just told you about being exposed to all these messages and being exposed to all this information doesn't necessarily need to mean that you are drowning in all of this information. So it's a different way of working, and that could help you drive the culture of sharing information and have people more okay with actually sharing what they have in Microsoft Teams. Now, also, of course, give them a tool and yourself to keep your Teams environment a bit more tidying up. So maybe you have a bunch of teams that you don't actually have to be a part of, but yeah, they're not taking up too much space, they're just laying around. well, using this tool, you may think differently. Again, give your users a reason to adopt Microsoft Teams. Now I'm going to make a quick pause and I'm going to publish the URL so you don't have to put that in manually. And there we go.
And perfect. I do have another license question about the previous part with sharing in Teams.
Yes.
Is there any specific license required for this?
For the, which one?
So the actual question is, the Power BI and Teams requires separate Power BI Pro or Premium license as well, or not?
Ah, right. Sorry. So the application itself doesn't come with any license. The Power BI application in Teams is free. You can install it, but you don't really have anything in there unless you have a Power BI Pro license or a Premium license. Now, right. Yeah. So with Power BI, you can actually connect to Dataverse without needing to license that specific report. It's actually like this. You can download Power BI Desktop, which is the free product, and then you can connect to Dataverse, and the real Dataverse or Dataverse for Teams, doesn't really matter, and you can build your report, and that's going to be free. But you can't publish the report into the Power BI service and share the report with other people unless they have a Power BI Pro license. So that's kind of how it is. So if you want to get started and you don't have the funding for a Power BI license, which is like $8 a month per person, you could install Power BI Desktop, build your report, and then share the Power BI Desktop file to that person and have them opening it locally on their computer. It would work. It wouldn't be the best way of sharing information, but you would get all the insights, and it wouldn't cost any licenses at all. Yeah, of course. And if you have the E5 license, Power BI is included. So then you would have it either way.
And regarding the personalized metrics, there was a question, is it just for my company tenant or also for the tenant that I'm a guest in?
Right. Wow, I don't actually know. I think it is only for your company tenant where your account resides, but I have to look that up. It's kind of new, and I haven't found that much more information on the web for the personal connector. So most of what I've learned by actually using the connector myself and building this report. So I will have to look into that.
Perfect. That's it for the questions.
Perfect. Actually, all I have left is 2 slides. One of them is the summary. Give your users a reason to adopt Teams. Now, I have come up with a couple of reasons how you can use Power BI to adapt to Teams, or give them a reason to use Teams in correlation with Power BI, but give them a few more and allow for them to make the decision on what is valuable to them. Don't force anything on them. Just tell them that this is what I think should be valuable to you, but you determine if it is. And one size does not fit all, so be flexible. And remember that they will adopt Teams, not because you think it's valuable to them, but because they themselves believe so, and it needs to come from within, right? Now, in combination with actually using Power BI and the products of Power BI and the personal insights that you can get, you could also, of course, use the usage metrics from Microsoft 365 and look at an organizational scale instead, like what I've been doing here with one of the usage report or the adoption report that I've built for organizations to look at. And what this is, it looks at the overall usage within your entire organization, and then in this case, classified the amount of users that I would say is potential champions. But we also look at inactive accounts. In this case, it's 6% of people. They've done nothing in 90 days, haven't visited a SharePoint site, haven't sent an email, and maybe we could consider relocating their licenses to someone else, maybe by removing their costs, give E5 licenses to other people, and we don't even add costs on top of this, or we have a potential to drive up usage for these inactive people. So there are ways to attack the adoption question in Teams from multiple different angles using Power BI. And the last slide is, of course, to rate my session. Now, feel free to connect on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'll send the links in the chat as well. Tell me if there's anything you would like to hear more on, if I'm ever invited to talk on another Teams Nation conference. And well, if you do use any of the content that I'm sharing here today, please just reach out and tell me what you think about it, or if you want me to improve anything about this. Or if you have made improvements as well, feel free to roam this as you like.